So this is the fifth video that you are going to see, and it is related with the translation process. We have finished the initiation part. Now we will do the elongation of translation process both in prokaryotes and eukaryotes. So let us see. In elongation in prokaryotes, three events occur during the elongation process. So normally three events are observed during the elongation of your translation. Amino acyl tRNA, which is your charged tRNA, will have to bind to the A site of the ribosome by correct base pairing. And this is the first process, okay, that the newly charged tRNA called amino acyl tRNA have to bind to the A site of the ribosome by correct base pairing with the codon anticodon sequence found in the mRNA and tRNA. And this process will be enhanced by some elongation factor called EFTU. It also have a GTP. It is also a GTP binding protein and have a GTPase activity. The second thing that has to be done during elongation is peptide bond formation. That peptide bond formation has to be occurred between the amino acid present on the amino acyl tRNA in the A site with the initiated tRNA at the P site. This peptidyl transferase reaction will be catalyzed by the 23S rRNA found on the large ribosomal subunit. And the third thing that has to be done during elongation is the translocation or movement of the peptidyl tRNA to the P site so that the ribosome A site will be become positioned for the another cycle of codon recognition. So, so again I am repeating the last point if you don't able to understand. The last step is your translocation. Translocation means movement of the peptidyl tRNA. That peptidyl tRNA has to be moved to the P site so that the A site become empty. The ribosome's A site has to be become empty so that allowing for the next charged tRNA to become and interact with the specific codon regions of the mRNA for the next cycle of elongation process. So these are the three events that has to be done. First is amino acyl tRNA has to bind to the A site of the ribosome by correct base pairing with the coding regions of the mRNA. Then and this process of attachment of amino acyl tRNA to the A site is catalyzed by EFTU. Next, peptide bond formation occurs between the amino acid present on the amino acyl tRNA in the A site and initiated tRNA at the P site. So, in the next step, peptide bond formation occurs, and this peptide bond formation occurs between the amino acid present on the amino acyl tRNA in the A site with the initiated tRNA at the P site, and that reaction I have shown to you that how it occurs, how the peptide bond between the amino acid present on the amino acyl tRNA on the A site, their amino group is attacking to the carbonyl group of the peptidyl tRNA amino acid, okay, which has been attached with the tRNA and leads to the formation of peptidyl transferase reaction. And this whole reaction is actually catalyzed by 23S rRNA. If you are talking about prokaryotic elongation process, this peptidyl transferase reaction is catalyzed by your 23S rRNA of the large ribosomal subunit. The last thing that has to be done during elongation is your translocation or movement of that peptidyl tRNA. After the peptidyl transferase reaction, the peptidyl tRNA has to move to the P site from A site, and the uncharged tRNA has to move to the E site so that the A site become empty and it allows for the next round of elongation process. Okay. Now, this whole elongation process are controlled by two auxiliary proteins called EFTU and EFG. EFTU and EFG are the GTP binding proteins. That means both of these proteins they use GTP in binding energy, and they can also do hydrolysis to enhance this elongation process. So both of these factors, EFTU as well as EFG, they have a GTP binding activity, they have a GTPase activity. That means they can hydrolyze its own bound GTP to enhance this translation elongation process. Let us see the activity of EFTU. So EFTU with GTP. EFTU normally helps the amino acid tRNA to bind to the A site of the ribosome. Okay, so it helps the amino acid tRNA to bind to the A site of the ribosome, just like we have seen in eukaryotic translation initiation. We have seen the EIF2, right? We have seen we have seen EIF2, which associate with the initiator tRNA and allows the initiator tRNA to bind to the P site. In the same way, here EFTU, it helps the amino acid tRNA to bind to the A site of the ribosome. EFTU have a GTP molecule attached with it, and EFTU can only bind with the tRNA when it is attached with the GTP. Okay, so normally what does EFTU do? EFTU normally helps that amino acyl tRNA or the charged tRNA to be bind to the A site of the ribosome. EFTU have a GTP bound to it. It has a GTP as activity and it is attached with a GTP molecule. EFTU can only bind with the tRNA until it is attached with GTP. When the amino acyl tRNA correctly binds with the proper codon sequence in the mRNA, then EFTU hydrolyzes itself. It hydrolyzes its bound GTP and it get released from the amino acyl tRNA. So that's all for the EFTU function. EFTU function is to recruit the proper amino acyl tRNA to the A site of the ribosome. When the proper amino acyl tRNA binds with the proper codon sequence in the mRNA, then EFTU hydrolyzes its bound GTP and then it gets released from that amino acyl tRNA. Okay. So coming to the next point now, I will show you the diagram that how EFTU works. Okay, how EFTU works. Okay, well, it shows a EFTU function here. So again, it has been repeated here that when your amino acyl tRNA correctly binds with the proper codon sequence in the mRNA, then EFTU hydrolyzes its bound GTP. Okay, it hydrolyzes its bound GTP, and why it hydrolyzes its bound GTP? Because this EFTU, you will see later on in the image that EFTU at that time interacts with factor binding center, factor sorry binding center. This factor binding center is located on the large ribosomal subunit. I have said that EFTU allows the binding of the amino acyl tRNA to the A site. When it allows that binding of amino acyl tRNA to the A site, proper anticodon codon base pairing occurs in the amino acyl tRNA with the matched codon sequence on the mRNA, and At that time, EFTU interact with the factor binding center of the ribosome. Due to proper codon anticodon recognition by the amino acid tRNA, EFTU hydrolyzes its bound GTP, and then it gets released from the amino acid tRNA, because EFTU can only attached with the tRNA and when it is attached with GTP molecule. So as it hydrolyzes its GTP, when it hydrolyzes its GTP, it no longer bound with the tRNA, it get released from the amino acid tRNA. Okay, so normally this GTP hydrolysis is done by EFTU in a very sensitive way. The GTP hydrolysis that is done by EFTU is a very sensitive process. EFTU cannot hydrolyze GTP on its own until correct base pairing between codon and anticodon sequence occur between the amino acid tRNA with the mRNA. Otherwise, it will not hydrolyze itself, its GTP molecule. Okay, so that's why I have said that when perfect base pairing occurs between the amino acid tRNA's anticodon with the codon regions of the mRNA, then only EFTU will hydrolyze its bound GTP. Now, there is a region in the large ribosomal subunit known as the factor binding center, and EFTU can only interacts with this factor binding center after tRNA is loaded onto the A site and correct codon anticodon match is made. So the sequence is look like this: EFTU allowing the amino acid tRNA to bind to the A site. Proper codon anticodon base pairing occurs between the codon regions of the mRNA with the anticodon sequence of the amino acid tRNA. Due to correct codon anticodon match, EFTU then interacts with the factor binding center. This factor binding center is located on the large ribosomal subunit, and after interaction of the with the factor binding center, then EFTU hydrolyzes its bound GDP and it gets released from the ribosome. So these four events occur. I think you get that point. So the factor binding center is doing what? The factor binding center is activating the GTPase activity of EFTU, and EFTU can only interact with this factor binding center when the tRNA is located in the A site and proper codon anticodon match is made. Then only EFTU interacts with this factor binding center, and factor binding center activates the GTPase activity of EFTU, which causes the EFTU to release. Okay, now I have not said that during initiation. I have said little bit that when large during initiation of transcript translation in prokaryotes, I have said that when the large ribosomal subunit binds, IF2U, IF2 also hydrolyzes its bound GTP. But why? When your large ribosomal subunit binds, IF2 also interacts with the same factor binding center, and due to interaction it activates the IF2 GTPase activity, which cause hydrolysis of the IF2, which causes hydrolysis of the GTP done by IF2, and it gets released from the ribosome. Same way here also, EFTU, it allows the recruitment of your amino acid tRNA to the A site. Okay, proper codon anticodon pairing is occurred, in the A side, then EFTU interacts with the factor binding center of the large ribosomal subunit, and then EFTU and this factor binding center then activates the GTPase activity of EFTU, and EFTU gets released from the ribosome. Okay, so this is the picture you can see here. Well, this is the previous peptidyl tRNA, which is carrying that load of peptide bonds, load of polypeptide chain. EFTU is recruiting the newly amino acyl tRNA onto the A side of the ribosome. So it recruits that mRNA, it recruits that amino acyl tRNA to the A site. After recruitment, what happened? Proper codon anticodon pairing occurs between the amino acyl tRNA with the codon regions in the mRNA. Then EFTU interacts with the factor binding center, which has been written here. The factor binding center is located here. So EFTU then properly interacts with this factor binding center, and when proper codon anticodon match is made, EFTU, the factor binding center, activates the GTPase activity of EFTU, which causes hydrolysis of the EFTU bound GTP, and thus EFTU dissociate from the ribosome, from the tRNA, and now it becomes ready for the peptidyl transferase reaction between these two tRNA. So how this peptide bond formation occurs, how this peptidyl transferase reaction occurs, which is actually catalyzed by the 23S rRNA, we all know, but how it occurs, we have to prepare those mRNA, we have to prepare those tRNA actually. So it is saying that when the amino acyl tRNA binds to the A site of the ribosome, its 3' end is away from the site of peptide bond formation. And so this is the problem. So when your amino acyl tRNA binds to the A side of the ribosome, its 3' end is away from the site of peptide bond formation. So we have to somehow we have to place its 3' end close to the peptide bond formation, because the 3' end of the tRNA has the amino acid attached. Acceptor arm, remember, within the acceptor arm the amino acid has been attached with the tRNA. So in order for peptide bond formation, we have to place the 3' end of this amino acid tRNA close to the peptide bond formation. Now for the peptide bond formation, this amino acid tRNA must be close to the P site. The 3' end of the amino acid tRNA must be close to the P site. Within the P site, there is a peptide bond peptidyl transferase center is present, where the peptide bond formation will occur, and it is done by rotating the tRNA through a process called accommodation. So again I repeat, so EFTU done its job. Now the main problem is the 3' end of the amino acid tRNA is far away from the peptide bond formation, or you can say it is far away from the peptidyl transferase center. So to make that 3' end close to the peptidyl transferase center, we have to rotate that tRNA through a process called as accommodation, which is done. Now what happens during accommodation is, let us see what it has been says. By rotating the tRNA, by rotating the tRNA, If incorrect base pairing occurs between the tRNA, it cannot pass through this accommodation process. Thus, it gets released from the ribosome. So, incorrect base pairing between the tRNA and mRNA will unfavor your accommodation process, because we have to rotate the tRNA fully about 180 degree. So, proper base pairing is must required to get over through this process, to get through this process, and thus incorrect base pairing of tRNA will be released from the ribosome, because they will not cannot able to undergo the accommodation process. So here you can see the accommodation of the tRNA. Well, this is correct pairing that has been shown. This is the tRNA, okay, and this is your mRNA, and this is your 16s rRNA, which is interacting actually. So correct base pairing has been occurring, and due to which your accommodation can be done. It can be carried out. It can rotate fully and it will not get displaced from the mRNA. Whereas incorrect base pairing cannot go through this accommodation process. The tRNA cannot able to rotate even also properly, thus it will get displaced from the mRNA. So this is a great fidelity, you can say, a great fidelity in the process of your translation process, where proper base pairing between the codon and anticodon can only goes through this accommodation, can allows the 3' end of the tRNA to be close to the P site, where peptide bond formation and peptidyl transferase reaction will occur. Okay, so it is showing the accommodation here. Correct base pairing will allows the, so you can see here, I am zooming it in, so you can see here the tRNA, it's 3' end. So this is their 3' end. This is the 3' end of tRNA where amino acid is there. So it is away from the P site, it is away from the peptidyl transferase center. We have to rotate it. We have to rotate it, and for this we have to go for the accommodation where the tRNA has to rotate about 180 degree to make this 3' end close to the P site where peptidyl transferase reaction will take place. So proper accommodation, if proper base pairing has been done between the tRNA with the mRNA, then only it can able to rotate, and you can see here proper accommodation has been done, and thus the 3' end of this amino acid tRNA is placed close to the peptide bond formation, where the peptidyl transferase reaction will be taking place, done by the 23S rRNA. Whereas due to the incorrect base pairing, that tRNA has been got off from the mRNA. Okay, so proper base pairing is very much required. Okay, so you can see what I have said about the accommodation process. Now let us see about the peptide bond formation, and then we will see about the EFG function. So once correctly charged tRNA has been placed in the A site and has rotated, that is your accommodation has been done, into the peptidyl transferase center, peptide bond formation will take place. So once your correctly charged tRNA has been placed in the A site and has rotated also very well due to correct base pairing between the codons and the anticodons of the charged tRNA. Now the 3' end of the charged tRNA is located close to the P site. It is located within the peptidyl transferase center, where your peptide bond formation will take place. The peptide bond formation will be occurring between the amino acids of the amino acid tRNA and the initiator tRNA. If it is your first elongation reaction, then the peptide bond formation will be occurring between the amino acid tRNA with initiator tRNA, and it will be catalyzed by the 23S rRNA, which is a component of your large ribosomal subunit. Okay, so base pairing occurs between the 23S rRNA and the CCA ends of the tRNA in the A site and P site that helps to position the alpha amino group of the amino cell tRNA to attack the carbonyl group of the growing polypeptide chain attached to the peptidyl tRNA. So what happens here, we can see that base pairing occurs between the 23S rRNA with the CCA ends. Well, you know where CCA ends is located at the 3' end of the tRNA, that is the acceptor arm. So base pairing is done between the 23S rRNA with the CCA of the tRNAs in the A site as well as in the P site. Now, due to base pairing between the 23S rRNA with the CCA ends of both tRNA found in the A site and P site, it positioned that alpha amino group of the amino acid tRNA to attack the carbonyl group of the growing polypeptide chain and to transfer that peptide bond to make a peptide bond. Okay, and this leads to a formation of peptide bond. The result will happen in this way, that the peptidyl tRNA, or better to say here the initiator tRNA, which was carrying the methionine, will be now left uncharged. The methionine is now attached with the amino acid tRNA with its amino acid, and it forms now a peptidyl tRNA, while the initiator tRNA will become uncharged here. Okay, so this is the reaction. I will show you. Let us see. Well, it has not been shown here properly. Here EFG has been shown, so we have to move to the previous one. So you know very well about the peptide bond formation. I have also given to you in the previous lectures. I have shown it to you. So you have to go through this. You have to see this one. Okay. So you can see that the amino acid tRNA and the peptidyl tRNA, here no initiator tRNA has been shown. So they are placing close to the factor binding center. They are placing close to the peptidyl transferase center, and then it catalyzes the formation of peptide bond. As you can see, peptide bond formation has been done here. Well, don't look this. This is actually the function of EFG. We will show you them later on after this part. And when it catalyzes the formation of peptide bond, uh, the charged tRNA, which was the peptidyl tRNA, it becomes uncharged now, because the peptide bond chain has been now attached with the amino acid tRNA. You can see here very well, attached with the amino acid tRNA, while the peptidyl tRNA becomes uncharged, and it will be exited from the E site, exit out from the E site. Now you can see the function of EFG. Well, EFG function is what? Let us see. What is the function of EFG? So the function of EFG is, let us see, once the peptide bond formation occurs during the peptidyl transferase reaction, the tRNA in the P site is deacetylated. That means the tRNA which was located in the P site, it has no amino acid attached with it, so it becomes uncharged now, and the growing polypeptide chain is linked with the tRNA in the A site. So now we have to move it. We have to move this uncharged tRNA which is located in the P site and the charged tRNA which is located in the A site, because we have to do the next round of elongation process. So for this, for further elongation, the P site of the tRNA has to be moved to the E site, and the A site of the tRNA must be moved to the P site through a process called translocation. So once the peptide bond formation has been done, and it is done by the peptidyl transferase center, the tRNA in the P site is now deacetylated. That means the tRNA has not any amino acid bound in the P site, so it becomes uncharged. P site tRNA become uncharged now, while the growing polypeptide chain is now linked with the tRNA in the A site. So the tRNA in the P site has to move to the E site, and the A site tRNA, where the growing polypeptide chain has been linked, it has to be moved to the P site, so that the A site will become empty and allows for the next round of translational elongation. Now this movement is called translocation of the tRNA. And who catalyzes this process? It is catalyzed by EFG. For the translocation process, another elongation factor is required, and the name of that elongation factor is your EFG. Well, EFG also have a GTPase activity just like EFTU. EFG can only bind with the ribosome when it is bound with GTP molecule. Now, during the peptidyl transferase reaction, there is little bit shift, or you can say movement in the position of the tRNA in the A site. That is, the 3' end of the tRNA has been moved to the P side, because uh, uh, during accommodation process we have seen that in order for the peptidyl transferase reaction to occur, the 3' end of the amino acid tRNA has to rotate, and its 3' end has to move, be closer to the P side, so that they can carry out the peptidyl transferase reaction. So due to which what happened, there is a space created on the A site, and this bit of space is enough. This bit of space is enough for binding of EFG. So EFG binds to the A site actually, in simple words, because a space was there, and this space was there because of that tRNA in the A site, because during accommodation the tRNA is rotated. It is rotated about 180 degrees, so that its 3' end will be located to the close to the P site of the peptidyl tRNA. Okay, or you can say initiator tRNA if you are going for the first elongation process. So, and why it is located to the P side, so that it can carry out the peptidyl transferase reaction as catalyzed by 23S rRNA. So that space will be enough for the EFG to come and bind. Okay, so this bit of space in the A site of ribosome allows the binding of EFG. Now when EFG binds, it contacts again with the factor binding center of the large ribosomal subunit and causes GTP hydrolysis. It stimulates the GTP hydrolysis of EFG. As a result of GTP hydrolysis, EFG changes its shape, changes its conformation. Thus, it allows touching to the small subunit and trigger translocation process. So, simple thing, EFG goes and bind to the, after the peptidyl transferase reaction, EFG goes and bind to the A site of the ribosome, where it interacts with the factor binding center. Factor binding center again stimulate the GTPase activity of the EFG, because EFG is also a GTP binding protein. It has a GTPase activity. So due to stimulation of GTPase activity done by factor binding center, EFG undergoes some conformational change, due to which what happens, due to its change in the structure, it touch to the small subunit and triggered the translocation process to occur. Then EFG get removes away from the ribosome, because EFG has been it it actually hydrolyzes its own bound GTP and becomes GDP, which has low affinity in binding with the ribosome now. Okay, and thus the elongation process is completed fully. Okay, we have introduced the amino acid tRNA to the A site as done by EFTU. Then EFTU interacts with the factor binding center after proper base pairing between the codon and anticodon regions of the amino acid tRNA with the mRNA occur. Then factor binding center stimulate that GTPase activity of EFTU. EFTU hydrolyzes its own bound GTP and gets released. Then accommodation occurs where due to proper base pairing, the 3' end of the tRNA has to become close in contact with the P site tRNA. Why? Because at that site your peptidyl transferase reaction will occur. So proper accommodation occur, rotation of the tRNA occur. So the due to rotation of the tRNA, properly um, anticodon codon pairing should be needed. And after accommodation, the 3' end of the amino acid tRNA located close to the P site. Now 23S rRNA will catalyze the peptidyl transferase reaction. Okay, it occurs between the amino acids, where we can see the amino group of the amino acid tRNA will attack to the carbonyl group of the amino acid which has been attached with the peptidyl tRNA, and due to which peptide bond formation occur. And one more thing it occurs, that the amino acid which was attached with the peptidyl tRNA has been shifted to the amino acid tRNA. So now the peptidyl tRNA will not have any amino acid bound. It becomes uncharged fully. It has to be moved out from the ribosome, and for that reason, translocation process is needed. And for translocation process to begin, we need EFG. EFG also have a GTPase activity. It bounds to the ribosome's A site, because there was a space in the A site, a bit of space was there where easily EFG bounds with to the ribosome. There it again interacts with the factor binding center. Factor binding center stimulates the GTPase activity of EFG, and EFG hydrolyzes its bound GTP and changes its shape. Due to change in its shape, EFG, what happened? It allows the touching of the small ribosomal subunit, which triggers the translocation process to begin. That makes the tRNA to shift to the other sides of the ribosome, like the uncharged tRNA will now move to the E site, and the charged amino acid tRNA will now move to the P site. Okay, now after GTP hydrolysis, what happened to the EFG? EFG only bind with the ribosome when it is associated with the GTP. After GTP hydrolysis, EFG must release their bound GDP and bind a new molecule of GTP in order to carry out the next translocation process. So EFG, after its bound GDP has to be removed out and place a new molecule of GTP, and that is done by some another protein, obviously, so that it can carry out the next translocation process. So who does this process? Well, it is done by some other initiation, other elongation factor, and the name of that elongation factor is your Okay, EFG can carry out this process by itself, I am sorry to say, but EFTU cannot carry out this process. Well, EFG attach with associate with GDP now. Okay, so it has to release its bound GDP by introduction of a GDP molecule. And how it works actually, EFTG has a low affinity to bind with GDP. That's why the GDP got released, whereas EFG has a more affinity to bind with GTP molecule. So for EFG, it is a very simple process because GDP has a lower affinity for EFG than does GTP. So GTP has more affinity to bind with EFG than GDP molecule. That's why EFG very quickly binds with a new molecule of GTP and carries out for the next translocation process of translation. Okay, but in case of EFTU, a second protein is required to exchange its bound GDP for a GTP, and that is done by EFTS. EFTS. So EFTS is the second protein which helps to remove this GDP molecule of EFTU and replace with a new molecule of GTP. EFTS is acting here as a GTP exchange factor. And overall, if I say about the translocation process, right, that is done by EFTU and EFG, two molecules of GTP and one molecules of ATP is required for tRNA binding and translocation process. So overall, three energy molecules are being used for the translocation process. Two molecules of GTP and one molecule of ATP. Okay. So EFG does not require any additional protein when it is getting hydrolyzed. When it hydrolyzes its bound GDP due to interaction with the factor binding center, as GDP has low affinity with binding with EFG, so GDP get dissociated from the EFG, and GTP molecule has more affinity to bind with EFG, so GTP binds. So it quickly can be activated, but in case of EFTU, it requires a second protein called EFTS. EFTS is a GTP exchange factor. It replaces this GDP molecule with a GTP molecule. Okay, and about two molecules of GTP and one molecule of ATP is required for tRNA binding to the A site and translocation of the ribosome. Now in eukaryotes, EEF1 and EEF2 function similar during the elongation process of translation. So if someone asks the function of EEF1 and EEF2, the function of not EEF1, EEF1A, well, the 1A has not been seen here. So EEF1A, its function, it is a elongation factor, it is also a GTP binding protein, it has a GTPase activity, and the function of the EEF1A is similar with EFTU, whereas EEF2, it has also a GTP binding protein, it has a GTPase activity. The function of EEF2 is similar with EFG. So we don't need to write its function separately. Function is similar with EFTU and EFG. So if someone wants to write about the function of EF1A, you will write the function of EFTU because its function is similar, just similar. And the function of EEF2 is similar with EFG. Small e represents eukaryotic, EF for elongation factor, right? So that's why it is written that in case of eukaryotes, EEF1A and EEF2 functions similar during elongation process of translation. And let us see the function of EFTS. Well, we have seen just now that EFTS is a GTP exchange factor which replaces this GTP molecule of EFTU by a GTP molecule. In eukaryotes, this function of EFTS is similar with EEF1B, 1G, and D. So EEF1B, EEF1G, and D found in eukaryotes which function as GTP exchange factor. It exchanges the GTP molecule of EEF1A with GTP molecule. The same function we have seen in EFTU. So the mechanism of translation in eukaryotes is well conserved between eukaryotes and bacteria. Well, you can see here conserved means protected. Following the translation initiation, an ATS ribosome is poised or ready to move, or messenger RNA with the anticodon initiator tRNA in the P site base paired with the start codon. The second codon of the open reading frame is present on the A site of the ribosome, waiting for binding of appropriate amino acid tRNA. So it is saying that in eukaryotes, in eukaryotic translation process, the initiator tRNA is found on the P site, which perfectly base pair with the start codon as we have mentioned during the initiation process. And the second codon is positioned on the A site, waiting for the binding of appropriate amino acid tRNA. So a new amino acid tRNA will bind to the A site to carry out the elongation process. So, who carry out this process? Who allows the amino acid tRNA to bind to the A site of the ribosome in case of eukaryotic translation elongation? That is done by EEF1A, which is the ortholog of bacterial EFTU. Ortholog means similar in structure with similar in function with EFTU. So, EEF1A binds to the amino acid tRNA in a GTP dependent manner, just like EFTU. Here also EEF1A, in case of eukaryotic translation elongation, EEF1A binds to the amino acid tRNA and allows that, you can say directs that tRNA to bind to the A site of the ribosome. EEF1A also have a GTPase activity. It is a GTP binding protein. Then after codon recognition by the tRNA will trigger the GTP hydrolysis of EEF1A, releasing the factor and enabling the amino acid tRNA to be accommodated into the A site. Same thing here it is saying that after proper codon recognition done by the anticodon codon base pairing between the mRNA's codon with the anticodon of the tRNA on the A site, then it triggered the hydrolysis of the EEF1A, and thereby EEF1A get released from the tRNA. And then it cause accommodation, the same accommodation that has been mentioned in the bacterial translation process. Following the release of EEF1A, the amino acid tRNA is then accommodated into the A site. And EEF1A GDP is again recycled to form EEF1A GTP with the help of a GTP exchange factor called EEF1B. So on the other hand, EEF1A, which is released from the tRNA, it again recycled for the next round of elongation by exchanging its GDP with GTP molecule with the help of an enzyme called EEF1B. So EEF1B is similar to EFTS, which is a GTP exchange factor. On this side, you can see that the amino acid tRNA is now accommodated. It is now accommodated. It is now accommodated. Accommodated, that means it is a convenient way to settle that tRNA, so that the tRNA which is located in the which is located in the A site of the ribosome, it has to be placed to the close to the P site where the peptide bond formation will occur. Same thing, just like prokaryotic translation process we have seen. Okay. Peptide bond formation is accomplished by transition of the A site and P site tRNA into hybrid states with the acceptor ends of the tRNA moving to the P site and E site respectively. So in short, in good words, if I say in short words, in simple words, the peptide bond formation is done by the tRNA located in the A site and P site, and it is done the by the 3' ends of the tRNA mainly, because at the 3' end of the tRNA there is amino acid attached, and that amino acid is catalyzing the formation of peptide bond by the amino group of the amino acid tRNA with the carbonyl group of the P site tRNA, or you can say that peptidyl tRNA found on the P site. Okay. Binding of EEF2 GTP promotes translocation of the tRNA into the P site and E site respectively, and is followed by release of EEF2 GTP. Now, just like EFG carries out the translocation process, here also in case of eukaryotic translation elongation, the translocation of the ribosomes is carried by EEF2. It interacts with the A site of the ribosome where it hydrolyzes its bound GTP and causes translocation of the tRNA, moves to the P site and E site respectively, and is followed by release of the EEF2 GDP. So I've written in Bengali here. Those who can able to read Bengali, you can see in simple words I have tried to say this one. Okay. Now, after translocation of EEF2 GTP gets released from the ribosome, and unlike EEF1A, EEF2 does not require any exchange factor, just like EFG. Just like EFG in prokaryotes, they don't need any GTP exchange factor. EEF2 also don't need any exchange factor, right? It automatically, not automatically, actually the bound GDP has a low affinity with binding with EAF2, so it gets removes out. It has more affinity to bind with GTP, so it binds. So it does not need any other protein, GTP exchange protein, to catalyze this process. Now the ribosome is now ready for the next cycle of elongation with the release of deacetylated tRNA. That means the tRNA which is now fully become uncharged. It has no amino acid bound. It has to be released from the E site of the ribosome, and the A site tRNA has to move to the P site for carrying out next round of elongation process, where again the A site will be empty to allow next amino acid tRNA to come to the A site, catalyzed by EEF1A. Okay. Now the figure has not been mentioned here. It is not given in the book also. It has to be followed from the NCBI website. I have given you the link. Maybe you can get this link. This is a very old link, but still I think you can get that link. It is not been deleted maybe. Okay. So go to that link, or I will try to provide you in the WhatsApp group about the elongation process of translation in eukaryotes. The last one is your translation termination. Well, translation termination is pretty straightforward. Well, you see, in prokaryotic and eukaryotic organism, termination of translation differ in many aspects. Okay, so we have seen that initiation of translation in prokaryotes and eukaryotes are little bit similar, because eukaryotes have more initiation factors than prokaryotes. In elongation, you see almost the same. The name is different, but the same process is going on between the prokaryotic and eukaryotic translation elongation, but the termination is little bit different in many aspects. In the first step of termination, the release factor recognize the stop codons in the A site of the ribosome. So actually, what can I say? When the ribosome is encountering the stop codon, it is going on, it is moving towards the 3' end until it identify the stop codon, and you know the stop codon UAG, UGA, and UAA. So when the ribosome identifies the stop codon, then what happened? Release factor come. It recognizes these stop codons in the A site of the ribosome. And what are the release factors? In prokaryotes, the release factor is IF3. It will be RF3. I think I have written wrong little bit. Okay, we will do it later on. Yes, it will be RF, release factor. So release factors identify the stop codons in the A site of the ribosome. And these release factors are responsible for hydrolysis of the peptidyl tRNA and release that newly synthesized peptide, polypeptide chain. So normally what does this release factor do? Actually, release factor first it do the hydrolysis of the peptidyl tRNA, so that from the tRNA your polypeptide chain can be released. There is only one factor in the eukaryotic cell called ERF1, whereas prokaryotic cell there are two factors called RF1 and RF2. So here we can see that release factor found in eukaryotic cell is only one, RF1. It is known as ERF1. Well, small e refers to eukaryotic, RF means release factor 1. Whereas in prokaryotes they have two release factor called RF1 and RF2. So normally release factor, what they do hydrolysis of the peptidyl tRNA bond that causes the polypeptide chain to release out and terminate the process. In eukaryotes, they have only one release factor called ERF1, whereas in prokaryotes, there are two release factors called RF1 and RF2. Let us see the termination in prokaryotes. So there are two release factors that recognize the stop codon, RF1 and RF2. RF1 recognizes the UAA and UAG, whereas RF2 recognizes UAA and UGA. So both these release factor recognizes more than one codon. The UAA is common to both RF1 and RF2. These release factors bind to the stop codons that are assisted by RF3. So RF3 actually assists to bind this RF1 and RF2 to these stop codons. RF3 is a GTP binding protein which allows the binding of either RF1 or RF2 to the large ribosomal subunit. So RF1 and RF2 recognizes these stop codons and it is facilitated by RF3. RF3 is a GTP binding protein which allows the binding of these release factors to the large ribosomal subunit. So RF3 allows this RF1 and RF2 to bind to the large ribosomal subunit. Okay, so RF3 is playing the important role. It is allowing this RF1 and RF2 to identify these codons, stop codons, and also it allows the binding of this RF1 and RF2 to the large ribosomal subunit. Now, important thing that I want to say, that it's not easy to say, it's not easy to end up the translation process quickly. At one end, so I have said about the RF3 that it recruits, it actually allows the binding of this release factor to the large ribosomal subunit also. And what is the specificity of this RF1 and RF2? First specificity, I have said that it recognizes the stop codons. There is more specificity above that. At one end, at one end of RF1 and RF2, there is a conserved amino acid sequence found within the RF1 and RF2. At one end, there is a conserved amino acid sequence, and that conserved amino sequence is this, right? This is that conserved amino acid sequence which is found within the RF1 and RF2, and it is positioned near to the P site tRNA polypeptide complex. That means this conserved amino acid sequence of RF1 and RF2 is positioned close to the peptidyl transferase center of the large ribosomal subunit, and this will cleave, or you can say cut, the ester bond between the polypeptide and tRNA. Thus it causes free both the polypeptides and the tRNA. So again I repeat, if you don't understand, RF1 and RF2 have a conserved amino acid sequence. This is that conserved amino acid sequence, GLY, GLY, GLN. They represents the amino acids. Three-letter code, which codes for amino acids. This conserved amino acid is positioned close to the peptidyl transferase center of the large ribosomal subunit. And when this conserved amino acid sequence positioned near to the peptidyl transferase center of large ribosomal subunit, it will cleave, it will cut the ester bond between the polypeptide and tRNA. Thus, it causes the polypeptide chain to freed from the tRNA, and also the tRNA also get released. Now, this conserved amino acid sequence, which I have said, is your glycine, and glutamine. Together, what we will call as GGQ motif. So, this GGQ motif is a 3 amino acid sequence found in all class 1 release factors, both in release factor 1 and release factor 2. They have this GGQ motif on their surface, on their protein. This motif is essential for release of polypeptide chain from the peptidyl tRNA after occupying the position of peptidyl transferase center. So in simple words, this motif that you are seeing here, it is present on RF1 and RF2. This motif, this amino acid sequence is positioned near to the peptidyl transferase center of the large ribosomal subunit, and due to which cleavage of the, or you can say cut of the ester bond between the polypeptide chain and tRNA occurs, and thus it causes release of the polypeptide chain and also the tRNA. So it is very important. This motif are the important positions of the protein or of the DNA also, which has a specific function. So here this GGQ motif, which is glycine glycine glutamine, found in a particular position of release factor 1 and 2 in prokaryotes, which is essential for release of the polypeptide chain from the peptidyl tRNA after occupying the position of the peptidyl transferase center. In the next step, there is another protein called ribosome recycling factor, and IF3 also plays an important role for disassembly. Now we have to again disassemble the large and small ribosomal subunit in order to carry out the next round of translation. And EFG, so three of them, ribosome recycling factor, EFG and IF3, brings the translation machinery in the following way. It completes the translation machinery in the following way. RRF or ribosome recycling factor binds to the empty A site of the ribosome where it mimics like tRNA. So ribosome recycling factor, it binds to the empty A site of the ribosome where it mimics like tRNA. Then RRF or ribosome recycling factor recruits the EFG to the ribosome, and this EFG mimics like uh, EFG that in the elongation process. Well, EFG does the elongation process. It causes the movement of the ribosome, translocation of the ribosome during elongation. Here also it does the same thing, and EFG stimulate the release of uncharged tRNA bound on the P site and E site. So ribosome recycling factor binds to the empty A site of the ribosome where it behaves like a tRNA. Then it recruits EFG. EFG causes translocation, and what happens during translocation, it causes movement of the ribosomes, and it stimulates the release of uncharged tRNA bound to the P site and E site. Now, finally, IF3 comes into play, which separates the ribosome into two subunits for the purpose of next round of translation process. IF3 normally binds to the small subunit and displaces the large ribosomal subunit. So this is the whole thing that we can see. Well, this is the GGQ motif that I have talked to you about. The release factor 1 and 2, they have this GGQ motif, as you can see here. As you can see here, this is the GGQ motif, glycine, glycine and glutamine. Okay, this GGQ motif is very important because it position on the factor binding center and causes the uh, cutting, you can say cutting, or it causes a cut in the uh, tRNA so that it can so the polypeptide chain can be removed out from the tRNA. Okay, so it is written here, let us see. It is just written here. The GGQ amino acid motif that is involved in polypeptide hydrolysis is located adjacent to the 3' end of the P site tRNA. That means it is located on the factor binding center. The SPF peptide anticodon is located adjacent to the anticodon loop of the P site tRNA in a position that will allow easy to access the stop codon. Okay. And this is how the whole translation process came to an end. We can see here. Okay, you can see here. So this is the GGQ motif of the release factor 1. Both release factor 1 and release factor 2 have this GGQ motif. So now this GGQ motif, as you can see, it is located close to the factor binding center, Okay, and it stimulates the release of the polypeptide chain from the tRNA by doing peptide hydrolysis. So the peptide chain has been released. Okay, now GTP, it carries out by hydrolysis reaction. Okay, by doing its own, it hydrolyzes its own bound GTP by GDP, and due to which it also has weak interactions with the ribosome, so it also get removed out from the ribosome because it is now hydrolyzed. It has no weak affinity with the ribosome binding, so it get released. So you can see here. So in this way, the polypeptide is released from the ribosome. In the next step, you can see the ribosome recycling factor mimics like a tRNA. It binds to the A site. It binds to the A site. Okay, then comes the EFG again, which will cause the translocation process. And when EFG binds to a factor binding center, it causes the translocation and releases this the uncharged tRNA. And finally your IF3 will binds to the small ribosomal subunit and will release the whole ribosome from the mRNA. In this way your whole translation process will be completed. Well, about the termination in eukaryotes, if I say in eukaryotes there is only one release factor called ERF1, which recognize all the three stop codons UAG, UGA, and UAA. Although it is structurally different from the prokaryotic RF1 and RF2, with one domain mimicking a tRNA GGQ motif with this anticodon, it has a conserved glycine glycine glutamine motif. So it means to say, if you study this, you will see that ERF1 also have a conserved GGQ motif, okay, which is needed to cleave the ester bond holding the polypeptide chain to the last tRNA in the P site. So this GGQ motif is needed for to cleave, to cut the bond that hold that polypeptide chain with the last tRNA molecule in the P site. There is a second release factor called ERF3, which functions just like to the prokaryotic RF3. It helps the ERF1 to release that polypeptide chain and causes the ribosome subunits to dissociate and fall away from the mRNA. So this is how your whole translation process come to an end. Okay, you can see that almost some of the factors are similar. It mimics like a tRNA with its anticodon. You can see here I have said that about the ERF1, it can recognize all these stop codon. Second, I have said that um, there is a domain in ERF1 important region which mimics like a tRNA. Okay, this ERF1 also have a conserved sequence of GGQ motif just that is found just in case of RF1 and RF2 as well. And this GGQ motif will help to cleave that ester bond that holds the polypeptide chain with the tRNA in the P site. There is a second release factor called ERF3 which functions like RF3 using the GTP to help the ERF1 release the polypeptide chain and cause the ribosomal subunits to dissociate and fall away from the mRNA. Well, it is done by ERF1. Okay, ERF1 is encoded by the ETF1 gene. Okay, so there are more notes has to be given here about the ribosome recycling factor. You have to study them carefully. Well, you can go this. The same thing has been mentioned here. You can see them. Okay, I will discuss them one by one. Okay, so let us see about the ribosome recycling factor, which just mimics like tRNA. As I have said in the lecture, after the release of the polypeptide chain, done by RF1 and RF2, and also the release factors, the ribosome still bound to the mRNA. Okay, so after the release of the polypeptide chain, after the release of, and the release factors then come into play, the ribosome still bound to the mRNA and is left with two deacylated tRNA. Now, to participate in a new round of polypeptide synthesis, tRNA mRNA must be removed from the ribosome, because the ribosome has finished translation. It has to be used for the next round of translation in a new mRNA, and a ribosome must dissociate into its large and small ribosomal subunits. Collectively, these events are referred to as ribosome recycling. Now, in prokaryotic cell, there is a factor called ribosome recycling factor. This ribosome recycling factor cooperates with EFG and IF3 and recycle the ribosome after polypeptide release. The same thing I have discussed with you in prokaryotic translation termination. This ribosome recycling factor binds to the empty A site of the ribosome, while where this ribosome recycling factor mimics like a tRNA. Okay. Ribosome recycling factor also recruits EFG to the ribosome, and in events it mimics like EFG function during elongation. So EFG normal function just it as its way. In the elongation function, it behaves, it actually function like the translocation of the ribosomes, so that the A site becomes empty for allowing new amino acid tRNA to come during the elongation process. Here also the EFG functions to cause the translocation process. The EFG then stimulates the release of uncharged tRNA bound in the P site and E site. Okay, and then although although exactly how this release occur is unclear, it is thought that ribosome release factor is displaced from the A site by EFG in the same manner, just like displacement of tRNA from the A site during elongation. So the EFG EFG is doing the same function. Okay, so EFG and RRF are released from the ribosome along with the mRNA. So in this way, your EFG stimulates translocation and causes the movement of the ribosome, where RRF is also there, and cause displacement of that uncharged tRNA. And finally, IF3 participate in the release of the participate in separation of the ribosomal subunits, and thus it ends the translation termination process. Well, some inhibitors are also there which can inhibit the translation process in prokaryotes and eukaryotes. Well, some of the antibiotics are there. We all know that antibiotics are powerful tool to fight against certain disease, and many of the widely used antibiotics are medicine that will kill bacteria, but it will have little or no effect on eukaryotic cells. Hence, they are not toxic to patient. It is possible by observing the translation machinery also, because unlike if you do if we are able to observe the translation machinery in prokaryotes and eukaryotes, we can able to understand that which of the factors can be inhibited by which antibiotics, by which toxic agents, which is not harmful to the eukaryotic cells. Thus thus antibiotics have different kinds of targets in the bacterial cells, but approximately 40% of the known antibiotics are inhibitors of the translation machinery. So almostly half of the antibiotics are designed to inhibit the translational machinery of the target cells. And in general, these antibiotics bind to the component of translation apparatus and inhibit its function. Because different antibiotics arrest translation at different steps and they do so in a precise manner, they become a useful tool in the studies of mechanism of translation also, right? So as they can precisely bind to a certain protein which is required for the translation machinery, so that's why these are also used as medicine as well as to in research also to study the mechanism of protein synthesis in more depth. Let us see some of these antibiotics. The first antibiotics we all know is your tetracycline. Well, these antibiotics are targeted to kill the prokaryotic cell. This antibiotic tetracycline bind to the A site of the small ribosomal subunit. And what it does when it occupies the A site, it inhibits the binding of amino acid tRNA to the A site. So if the A site is occupied by the tetracycline antibiotic, how will the charged tRNA or you can say amino acid tRNA bind to the A site? In this way, it does its work. Then comes hygromycin B. This antibiotic is targeted for prokaryotic cell as well as eukaryotic cells to kill the fungus, that type of organisms. They normally are targeted to bind to the A site of the 30S ribosomal subunit. Okay, and it prevents the translocation of the A site tRNA to the P site. The main function of the hygromycin is to prevent the translocation or movement of the A site tRNA to the P site. Let us see some of the okay, this antibiotic we all know erythromycin. Well, it is targeted for the prokaryotic cell and it actually targets in at which site peptide exit channel of the 50s subunit. Well, the peptide exit channel is the E site where it binds of the large ribosome subunit. So it blocks the exit of the growing polypeptide chain from the ribosome and arrests the translation. If the E site is occupied by this erythromycin antibiotic, then how will the uncharged tRNA will removed out from the ribosome, and how will the charged tRNA, which is now become a peptidyl tRNA, how it will move to the A site? Automatically, the translation synthesis blocked. Then comes okay, more are there. I am not talking all of them. Let us see. Diphtheria. Okay, cyclohexamide is also an important antibiotic. Cyclohexamide is targeted for the eukaryotic cells, and it normally interacts with the peptidyl transferase center of the 60S ribosomal subunit. We all know about the function of the peptidyl transferase center. That is a very, very important part. This peptidyl transferase center is important for peptide bond formation and transfer of the peptide bond, transfer of the polypeptide chain from the tRNA in the P site to the tRNA in the A site. And thus, when it occupies this peptidyl transferase center, it will inhibits the peptidyl transferase activity. Okay, one more is there. Let us see one more. I try to study ricin and alpha sarsin, which are the protein toxins. They are targeted for prokaryotic and eukaryotic cells. What they do, they chemically modify the RNA in the factor binding center of the large ribosomal subunit. So the factor binding center, which is an important part play for stimulating the hydrolysis of EFTU and EFG. Okay, and also the initiation factor IF2 as well, but it is also applicable to the eukaryotic translation as well. So it chemically modifies the RNA in the factor binding center of the large ribosomal subunit, and it prevents the activation of the translation factor GTPase. So actually what it does, if this ricin and alpha sarsin bind to the factor binding center, then what happens? Simple thing, factor binding center will cannot able to hydrolyze, cannot able to stimulate the hydrolysis of your EFTU and EFG. So no elongation process will occur. Ultimately, initiation will also not proceed because it will the IF2 also required the factor binding center of the large ribosomal subunit to cater to stimulate its GTPase activity. Okay, so in this way, your chiromycin, not chiromycin, it's ricin and alpha sarsin carries out its function by just occupying to the factor binding center and prevents the stimulation of the GTPase activity as was done by the factor binding center. So you have to study this chart and you have to follow this in order to just for the inhibition of the translation process by the antibiotics. So that's all for the translation process. I hope throughout this whole video lectures that I have shared with you, maybe it will be helpful for your it will be helpful for you to understand. And if you have any doubts regarding this chapter, you can ask me in the WhatsApp group. Okay, so that's all for today's lecture.